Hello, and welcome to another episode of Wheel of Horror, the podcast where two best friends spin a wheel once a week. It chooses the horror film, and they discuss it. Today we're talking about 1986's Psycho 3, which was directed by Anthony Perkins.
Hey, Perks!
I'm your co-host, Alec.
I'm Erik, and with us again is Andy Danish. Andy, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Hey, Dan, back in the house.
Hey, Dean!
I just do that to everything now. Emaz. Andy, welcome back, dude. What's going on?
Thanks. I'm excited to talk about this franchise since Psycho is one of my favorite films, not just horror, but films overall, just because it's a fantastic movie and it's considered one of the top pieces of cinema and pieces of movie in all of movie history.
Can't even argue that. Absolutely. Psycho 1960 was the first one. Yeah, game changer of a film.
And we covered the second one about a year ago, maybe. And both Erik and I were pretty impressed by that.
Yeah.
For the time, the gap, and for being a sequel to such a massive film, it was like, we were both impressed.
Also 23 years after the original. So it's like, that's a gap between sequels. And
yeah.
It was honestly, Andy, what's your take on the second one? Let's start there.
The second one, it was interesting because it definitely tried to do a little bit of a misdirect. And I think that it definitely tried to give Norman a little bit more empathy, which is interesting because the first one does kind of provide a little bit of empathy in the sense that he's a character who is originally portrayed as having a lot of naivete, almost a little bit of Arrested Development. So I think this movie kind of tries to lean further in that direction and still like a victim of circumstances. And I appreciated also that they got Vera Miles back for it too.
Yep.
And it took me a couple of viewings afterwards, and I'm like, oh, Vera Miles is in it too. So it's like that gave it a little bit more legitimacy for me as well.
Yeah, and Alec, correct me if I'm wrong. Is like Quentin Tarantino a huge fan of Psycho 2, or is there another big director that loves it? Who is it?
Yeah, it was Quentin Tarantino. He did I think he did like best horror sequels with Eli Roth or something, and he was just going off about Psycho 2. He's like, it's so fucking good.
Like I only watched it that one time, but thinking back to it, I'm like, it is really good.
It was written by Tom Holland, who did Fright Night and Child's Play. So like, it's a good writer. It also, had a good cast. I mean, Anthony Perkins seems like he took a lot of like, I don't know, acting lessons or life experience in between 1 and 2.
Yeah, thought he was phenomenal in 2. But we're doing Psycho 3 right now.
Yeah, he spread his wings. He spread his wings big time for this one. He's directorial debut too.
Yeah. Do you want me to go through the stats off the bat just to like walk everyone through like the time and the money and stuff real quick? Might as well kick it off. Before we go through the plot, let's get this off. All right, so Psycho 1, June 16th, 1960 was its debut. Its runtime is an hour and 49, an $800,000 budget, not including inflation. It made $50 million back then. Crushed it back then. Rotten Tomato score, critics 97%, audience 95%. Top. Boom, boom. Alfred Hitchcock too, by the way. Psycho 2 came out, like I said, 23 years later, June 3rd, 1983. Its runtime was an hour and 53 minutes, a little longer than the first one. Budget was $5 million, and it took home $35 million. Good takeaway. Rotten Tomato critic was 62, and you don't see this often, but the audience score agrees with that with a 62% as well. Psycho 3, this film, 3 years later. It's like right off the bat, pretty much, for anyone who's been waiting for more Psycho films. July 2nd, 1986, it came out. Its runtime was an hour and 33, shorter than its other two. Its budget was $8.5 million. It only made $15 million. Rotten critic was 59, and the audience was 34. So definitely a dip. Probably because of how quick it came out compared to the second one, if I had to guess.
Possibly, but also like the idea of a Psycho 2 coming out, like it's like Star Wars. It was like when Phantom Menace came out, like everybody's like, we have to see this. I don't even care about anything in my life.
Absolutely.
You go and see Psycho 2, and then, some people probably are like, and some people are like, that was so good. So it like divides the audience right there if they're going to continue on with this franchise.
Yeah. Andy, what's your take from those numbers and whatnot?
I mean, I guess they thought they were going to try to pump out another one because all these other slasher franchises at the time were kind of revealing back-to-back, sequels like Friday the 13th, for example. It seemed like one came out every year during the 80s. So I think Psycho franchise thought it was okay to kind of follow that. You figure try to keep up with all these other franchises that are kind of just trying to knock them out, like Friday the 13th or Nightmare. Just the more, the better. And I think also, Anthony Perkins probably felt motivated to want to direct it because of the fact that Psycho 2 was so successful.
Yeah.
I do think part of maybe what might have hurt it a little bit was the fact that it tried too much to mimic the first one, in the sense that some of the shots, the music, and the way it's the production value of it. Like, there are so many shots where they look like they're like lights on his eyes, for example, or like the way he stands in front of the bathroom door and he's like holding his hand over his mouth, the same way he does when in the first one he first sees what Mother, quote unquote, did when Mother kills Marion Crane in the shower scene. Or even like close-up shots of like his eyes when he's like peering through the picture in the motel. And I think there were like just so many of those shots that basically just tried to mimic the first one that I think took away from it having its own identity or trying to do its own thing.
It was trying too hard. Is what you're
Yeah.
saying. Yeah, I got that. I agree with you there.
I agree with two of the things you said, Andy. Specifically the scene where I can't remember her name, but the girl, Marion Crane's like lookalike, the MC girl, Maureen or whatever. When she falls down the stairs, I didn't like that they pulled that right from the original Psycho. That did kind of distract me a bit. But I was glad that you brought up that it's like it's in the 80s, it's in that time of other slasher films, kind of like, it was the decade of horror slasher franchises. So for this film to come out in 88, this one felt way more like a Friday the 13th movie than the second one did. I don't know. I really, when all those kids were there and the types of kills.
Yeah, there's like the football team sort of like watching the game in the motel. And there's a lot of like, all the, like you said, traditional archetypes of victims in like slasher movies.
Yeah, so it did feel more in line with the movies of the time that it was competing with.
And I mean, it made its money back. There's no doubt, but there's a significant dip from $800,000 from the first film to making $50 million, and the second film was like triple the money. This is like barely doubling the money, so it's like you can feel the dip, in quality and audience reaction.
Well, think about it though, Eric, because like the Friday the 13th movies, they were still making more money than this was. And it's kind of like because Jason and Freddy and Michael Myers, those are of that decade. Those are like that generation's.
This is the like not even 1961. This is 1960. We're talking like fresh out of the 50s. This is a film that's old.
It's your parents' slasher, so it's like
100%.
Are people who saw it as teenagers in 1960 going to be that into going in 1983?
Well, how do you bring them into it? You bring the homecoming party into it. You bring the sex into it. You bring the raunchiness into it. So like you feel that like the steroids being pumped into it.
Yeah.
And they did and put in more blood and a little bit more gore into it, which they really didn't use in the first Psycho. Like you really maybe saw like a little bit of blood like going down the drain and like in the first shower scene, but in this one like you see like decaying corpses and you see brighter red blood, more visible blood. I think one of the more spine-tingling feelings I felt when Norman stuffs the carcass or the body inside the ice bucket outside of the motel. And then, the sheriff is coming up and, he's saying like, I don't have any evidence, so I'm not going to arrest him until I have any evidence. And he's going into the motel bucket and, he's not looking the fact that the ice has like blood all over it. So he's just like sucking on it. And Norman's like, ugh. And for me, I'm the same way. I'm like, oh my God, no, ew. I was cringing up at that moment.
Yeah.
This is a gross movie. That was gross when he was like stuffing that crow in the beginning and he's eating the peanut butter cracker. I was like, what the fuck? Put gloves on. Like there's a couple moments in the movie that was like really gross. But Eric, do you want to give like a brief overview of like the beginning of the movie so we can kind of like go step by step?
Yeah. So it starts off at like what's it called? A nun place? What's that called? I don't even know the term.
I think that's it. Nun place.
Nun place. A bunch of penguins.
A nunnery.
A penguin place. So a bunch of nuns, and this nun is like
a convent. Sorry.
convent. Yeah, so yeah, I was trying to think of the
I think
word.
that's witches.
Convent. Yeah, we'll say it. It's the same thing if you think about it. So there's this nun who's like denouncing God and her faith, and she's about to jump off of the bell tower, and she's being stopped, and then she accidentally knocks another nun off, and everyone's like, "You're gonna go to hell." And so you think like she'd just continue on with what she was doing, but she's like, "No, I'm gonna run away now. After I tried to take my life, and now it's even worse, but now I'm gonna walk away." Which is a weird concept to me. And she's on the run. She meets this guy who picks her up, like a cool, like, ooh, I'm like a Bruce Springsteen guy. And he picks her up and he makes the move, makes the Harvey Weinstein move, if you ask me. Very rapey.
Yeah.
Very, yeah. So, and she's like, no, leaves. And she's like on her own, probably starving. Meanwhile, he's driving. Ends up at, where he ends up? The Bates Motel looking for a job. And Norman's there, like, I need help. I got a lot of work coming in. It's homecoming weekend. It's this, it's that. And he gives this man a job. And it's like one of those things like, Norman, like, do you really want to hire people here? Because you're hiding a lot. Like, if anyone like looks at your refrigerator right now, they're gonna be like, what is this?
Yeah, that's true. That is true. It's like, why didn't he just be like, yeah, actually get out of here?
He should be a one-man show. It's like, I could survive the next couple weeks.
Yeah.
So that happens, hires him. It's going good. And Alec, take it from there, please. I'm trying my best.
Oh, let me ask you also, did that guy remind anybody else of Nicolas Cage in Raising Arizona with like the haircut and kind of like the guitar, sort of like, sort of like a creepy version of Nicolas Cage in Raising Arizona almost.
Yeah. No, definitely. Well, Eric, do you know who that is, right?
No.
Dude, that's Lapidus from Lost, the guy in the helicopter from like season 4 or whatever.
I'm gonna have to look it up.
Dude, look it up. Look it up right now.
All right, Lapidus from Lost. Keep going, guys.
But anyway, so yeah, I did recognize that actor. But yeah, he's a scumbag, dude. He's like a rapist. He's a robber. He's this bad guy. He ends up working at the motel, and that woman from the beginning, the nun, the runaway nun, she ends up at the Bates Motel too. But she's going there for a different reason. And it's kind of cool because this takes place 1 month after the second one, so it's like really continuing the plot. So Emma Spool was this woman that we think is Norman's real mother, And Norman kills her at the end of the second one, puts her upstairs, and starts treating her as if she was, his mother from the beginning of the first one. Yeah, so the cops are still looking for Emma Spool, and there's a journalist who's in the town, like, trying to figure out what's going on, thinking that Norman probably did it, but people in the town are defending him, which is nice. But yeah, it kind of kicks off with that little mystery of like, where is Emma Spool? Did he kill her? And then we get the introduction of, this nun who looks exactly like Marion Crane from the original one. Her initials are also MC. So it's like, it triggers Norman to the point where he's like, all right, he already was killing people, but he's like, okay, I'm like totally back now. So yeah, he goes to kill the Marion Crane lookalike, Maureen Coyle. And he ends up saving her. She was committing suicide in the bathtub, and he goes in and saves her. And that kind of, kicks off a whole other part of the film.
And I just got the Lapidus thing from Lost. Yeah, you nailed it, Alec. How would I ever recognize him, though? Be real.
I did.
You looked at. You didn't fucking recognize him.
I swear to God.
There's no fucking way you recognized him like that.
Swear to God.
I don't believe you. No.
All right. Anyways. But yeah, the direction of this film, it is more similar to the first one, like you said, Andy. It's like Norman's not the anti-hero like he was in the first one. In the second one, he is back to like, I'm killing people, I'm dressing up like my mom, I'm split personality guy again.
Yeah, and I think it tries to lean more into like empathizing with Norman or kind of bringing out his naivete a little bit, even though at this point, he's kind of losing his boyishness aesthetically because, his hair is like all grayish and like the way it's trimmed, it's not parted over. He's wrinkly in the face and his voice is all like raspy. So he doesn't have the boyish look that he has in the original cycle, which I think kind of detracts from its premise a little bit. Because in the first one, like when it was written, Hitchcock had cast Anthony Perkins as Norman Bates because he thought it would have been better to have Norman Bates be somebody who wouldn't necessarily be pegged as a murderer. Because in Robert Bloch's novel, which is based on, Norman is like, overweight and like balding and like, creepy looking. And so the first one has like, it's kind of like a flip side of it. So you don't necessarily see it coming when, Norman is revealed as being the killer. But in this one, Norman, Anthony Perkins, naturally aging, of course, he loses that muster a little bit.
Wow. I didn't know that about how the book had a burlier guy as the killer. That's cool.
Yeah, it was Hitchcock's decision to, cast Anthony Perkins or write the character differently.
Because my take has always been that Psycho Norman Bates is like a scarecrow. Like I always thought he like picks on his prey. Like he's like he waits for these birds to come to him and then he kills them. I mean, look at the first one especially. He stuffs birds and he's like obsessed with birds. And you mentioned Andy how there's a scene with a crow in this one or whatever. And I've always thought of Norman Bates as like a human scarecrow that draws people in and then like kind of like a spider, like then catches them in his web. It's like a scarecrow / spider in my mind.
Okay.
It's interesting though because like, no, because Jeffrey Dahmer came after this. Because it's like the whole idea of Norman is like, yeah, you're right. He stuffs the birds. He also keeps his mom alive by putting like sawdust in her and stuff like that. So like he wants to keep people with him, and animals with him.
It's like a farmer, scarecrow, like taxidermy. It's all like kind of like you get that from him.
But that's what Jeffrey Dahmer wanted to do too, kind of. He wanted like zombies out of his victims to like always be with him. So like, ugh.
It's like always a piece with you. It's always like, oh, they're with me. Like, ugh.
Yeah, but Norman's like very unassuming that, yeah, you're right, that he would be a killer. And I think that is Anthony Perkins. He seems more just like a very timid deer kind of guy. And I do like that carried over from the second one, that the town is like, he served his time. Like, he's not crazy. Leave him alone sort of thing.
What was he eating in the first one too? Wasn't he eating like corn or something in the first?
He was beating candy corn out of the dish.
Candy corn. So he's like a bird, little like that's like, come on. Like he's a scarecrow. And I think it's what Alfred Hitchcock was going for. These movies kind of moved on from that, but to me, I wish they leaned into that more.
I always thought that he had a boyish quality as like misdirection. And I definitely agree with that analogy of him kind of stalking his prey and swooping in like a bird and having the stuffed birds, since he was taxidermist, did taxidermy, come in like a bird's is definitely like a really great analogy, especially in those shots where you have like the bird staring over, anybody who's sitting in his lounge.
Exactly. And he's the scarecrow. Like I that's always my take, but keep going, Andy. I'm sorry.
I think that the fact that he's eating candy though, and he's kind of just like, standing there very nonchalantly, and it's like it's a kid who would usually eat candy like that. And so I would attribute that to his boyishness, and also the fact that he just is completely flustered and doesn't know how to really handle problems or talk to people, talk to women, or like, talk to his mother. And he's, somebody who is stuck in this arrested development because he comes across as unable to deal with real world problems. And yeah, we do see more of that in later on movies. This is true. I think I always gleaned that he essentially just he was working really hard to protect the image, protect the vision that he had by like putting the cars in the mud or just putting everything out of sight. He just wanted to maintain this life and this fantasy that he had going on inside of his head.
It's almost like how long can he keep this hotel up for? Like this hotel is going to go away the second he's caught, and he's so close to being caught. It's like great dramatic irony where we as the viewer know, like, hey, like the second they drain that swamp, or the second they do this, like.
Well, you think that though, Eric?
Yeah, but they don't.
No, but that didn't happen in the second one because like he went away at the end of the first one, and then they gave it to that Toomey guy, that like drug dealer guy. So like, I mean, there is a fourth one. I don't know what happens because he's going away again.
The fourth one, the direct to video one, or direct to street HBO one, or something like that.
Yeah, because like I want to know what happens. You're right, Eric. Because like, does the hotel just go into disarray, or does like it fall into the hands of another like drug addict, like in the second one?
Yeah. But so anyway, like I mean, let's wrap up the plot as much as we can. Where are we at?
Yeah, so the nun tries to kill herself, but as Norman's going to kill her, he saves her for some reason because I don't know, maybe feels bad at some degree. So the nun is saved, and Norman has the bad guy running his hotel, and Norman's like taking care of her, kind of. He's letting her stay there, and this reporter talks to the bad guy who's running the hotel and figures out that like, yeah, Norman's like crazy and we gotta like do something about it. We also find out that Emma Spool is not actually Norman's mom, but actually his aunt.
Yeah, that was wild, right?
Yeah, that was.
I know it tried to add another curl or kink into like his backstory. What a twist!
Yeah, but it's like the last movie had this twist, and they're like, actually, never mind. And that's the twist in this one. It was like, never mind.
That always rubbed me the wrong way too, kind of trying to explain him more than he needed to be explained. It's like, okay, we got what we needed to know after the first movie. There's nothing more to explain about him. So then just, I think the other two things where it's like, oh, Norma is not actually his mother. And then like, oh, Spool was actually, his aunt, and she was jealous, so murdered his father because she was jealous of Norma.
Yeah, like make it like Psycho is a genetic thing, is what they're trying to make it sound like. And also undoing everything pretty much at the same time.
It was weird. I think they just needed to give it a twist, because all these movies have that. So
Star Wars was around the same time. It's like, no, Norman, I'm your aunt. Like, pretty much. Like, that's what happens.
I do have one scene. I've one shot that's my favorite, and then one scene that's my favorite. So I'll tell you my favorite shot first. But I actually loved how they used clips from part 3 and part 2. I'm sorry, from part 1 and part 2. I like loved that, where they show the shower scene, and then it like cuts really quick to the new actress, her face on the ground, and it was in color.
That was really cool. You're right.
Yeah, I kind of like that, and I don't know, I like how they utilized old footage, so I really appreciated that. But my favorite scene in the movie, dude, is that sex scene. That sex scene is insane. With Lapidus or whatever, and the I don't know, the girl he meets at a bar or whatever, and he has like the lights on his like dick, and he's like flashing it on her.
The purple light thing.
He has like the Enagata Vita lampshade over, and it's like all trippy inside of his room.
Dude, I thought that was, like, he's only been at the hotel for like a day. I'm like, how did he decorate his hotel like that? But the other thing I just want to ask you guys, do you guys remember in like maybe 2005, there was this Cheetos commercial, and there was a song in it, but it sounded like it was taken from this movie. Like when they're having sex, it's like this weird generic like 80s synthesizer, and I was just like, where did they get this song? But it reminded me of something, and I have the Cheetos like commercial song.
Can you hum it for us?
Yeah, hum it.
Hold on, let me.
No, Andy has it right. Hum it now.
Hold on, Jesus.
The second we're done with this podcast, please send it to us,
all right.
and I will absolutely comment on when we post this and stuff if it holds water. Okay.
Anyways, so yeah, that sex scene is fucking crazy. It was just absolutely crazy. But that guy was such a piece of shit from the start that there's like zero redeeming qualities. I mean, he attempts to rape a woman. He tries to steal from Norman the second he meets him. I mean, when he has sex with that woman after the sex scene we were just talking about, he like kicks her out, throws her out. Like when she fell outside of that hotel room, that was a real fall. She tripped over like the parking barrier thing.
I don't know, the stunt double or whatever that did that.
I don't think that was a stunt double.
I think it was just like a foam body.
I think that was a person, and
damn, that's a stunt person, right?
I mean, she was naked, looked kind of the same, but I don't know. But anyways,
it was a blow up doll.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, but then she goes into the this scene. This is where I was like, okay, this is definitely like an 80s slasher movie. Is when that same woman went to the phone booth and she tries to like call somebody, and she like takes off her top again. She's like, oh, it's on backwards, and like takes it off, and you can just see her naked again. I was like, this is like a Friday the 13th movie now.
Yeah, my favorite like Friday the 13th shot was when he kills that woman in the bathroom. It's like the sober one at the homecoming party on the toilet.
Yeah.
And then he literally like kills her, and then she's ripping the toilet paper, like spot, and he just like cuts the toilet paper. Like, no, we need to save money.
Oh my God,
that was like my favorite shot from the film so far.
I mean, he killed people though. It felt like Jason. I was kind of like, no, like Norman, you should kill people that deserve to be killed. You're just killing. Like that girl was like, hey, can you shut the door? I'm peeing, and he's like, you're dead. And I was just like, all right, what did she do?
Dwayne, the guy, he's starting to come on to Norman and stuff.
All right, so the ending is, basically Dwayne, the bad guy, he is informed about, he goes into Norman's house and he finds his dead mom, and he's just...
Norman's not the bad guy, it's Dwayne, not the serial killer, the fucking rapist guy.
Oh yeah, he tries to blackmail him or something.
Yeah, he's like, give me all your land, basically. And he's like, no. So Norman and him get in a fight, but it's disgusting because Dwayne takes, the corpse of the mom,
Oh, I know.
and he like kisses it, and he's like, isn't it called mummy? And he's like kissing it and stuff. So Norman freaks out and kills him, we think.
Knocks him out with a guitar, and then like, yeah.
That guy had the worst death ever. I mean, he gets beat with his own guitar, beat with a lamp, beat by Norman pretty bad. Then he gets his like throat crushed in a car and then drowns to death. I was like, dude, well, he deserved that kind of.
Yeah, I mean, he kind of deserved it. He's a piece of shit. Like,
Yeah. I didn't know if he died though. I was expecting him to come out and like, go at him again.
you think he was gonna come? Like, I mean, he's a young kid. Maybe he could survive, but yeah.
Dude, he was like 38. I looked him up. He was old.
And here he was 38. Wow, that's a good 38 for him. Okay.
I know. I was like, damn, dude, good for you. But yeah, so after that, not Marion, what's her name? Maureen. She really tries to like be with Norman. She's like, I like him. He forgives me. I forgive him. Jesus, all the good stuff. And she goes back and I don't know. Norman like accidentally knocks her down the stairs.
Right? Like that's how it ends, right?
Oh, it's because because his mother is like, pulling him away, like, and he just knocks her with his shoulder. I think is just sort of like, wait, what? Oh my God, sorry. Wait, I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
it's just like a stupid accident, and so I think, like you said, it was a little bit little bit cheap as a way to like kill somebody or kill somebody off, or like, because all of a sudden it's like, wait, no, I didn't actually mean to kill her. Now I actually feel guilty about all this, as a way to kind of like make him reflect on himself. And I think then that triggers him to stuff Emma Spoole's body. It's not his mom's corpse at this point, because the reporter is trying to be like, this isn't what happened. You got to understand. And, instead of stabbing the reporter, he just goes up and stabs the corpse instead. And the mom's like, you can't do anything right. What's the matter with you?
Oh, God.
Be like, you can.
Mom, I'm trying, Mom.
Oh.
Well, the reason that, I mentioned this earlier in the podcast, that I hated the way that Maureen dies is because, like, when we see the first Psycho, we're like, okay, that's a cool shot, but, like, it's pretty unrealistic a guy would, like, trip down the stairs that way. But then another person trips down the stairs that way. That's like you're dancing down the stairs. So I was like, I don't know. If you're gonna have him kill her on the stairs, just have her fucking break her neck and, like, rolling down it. Don't do the same thing, because it's distracting. And then also I'm like, wait, she's fucking dead? I thought they were gonna, like, Bonnie and Clyde it up and be like this evil murderous duo, but okay, never mind. So then, yeah, the Norman gets arrested and he steals his mom's hand. So the cops didn't do a very good job patting him down.
Yeah, no shit. He brought a dead hand with him in the cop car. Are you kidding me?
I mean, if he could do that, he could bring a gun easily.
And again, that's also the final shot is trying to mimic like the final shot of Psycho, where he's like looking down at the camera really creepily. He's like,
yeah.
And again, that's like, another like, oh, mother's still with him. Mother's still in his head.
Yeah, but he's like, he's saying like, I'm free now. Free from
Kind
what?
of.
Mother? He's free from
But
mother.
he's got her hand, so he's not really.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so that's really, that's so stupid that he still has the hand, but it's like, you're not free then, Norman. But let me ask you this, because I don't think they said this in the second one. Obviously, it's a very famous line in the first one. It's like, we all go a little mad sometimes. I didn't like it when they said it in this one. I hated it.
When? I don't even remember.
When the nun is like, you must think I'm mad. Like, how could you help me? And it's like, it's okay. We all go a little mad sometimes. He like looks at the camera and winks and,
No, it didn't work. Yeah. No, I got that.
Yeah, didn't love that.
All right, well, that's pretty much the film.
Well, I've got one more thing. I just want to say.
Yeah, go for it.
I doubt you guys have ever seen this movie. I don't know why I've seen it so many times. But have you guys ever seen Mommy Dearest from 1982?
I have. That's the one where it's the three killers in the middle of like, three redneck killers, and they have their mom kind of telling them to kill people. Or am I thinking of another one? Oh no, that's Mother's Day. Never mind.
Yeah, I'm like close. It's actually an autobiography on Joan Crawford.
Oh yeah. I do. I know about this. I know.
Yeah, anyway, so the little girl or I guess when she's an adult, that's the same actress in this movie. But yeah, that's a very interesting movie. We should probably cover on here, Eric. It's a real movie about an actress from the 40s who beats the shit out of her kids, and they made a movie into it. Anyways.
I mean, yeah, it sounds great. Let's do it.
No, why a hang us? That line is from that movie. Anyways. But yeah, so you guys got any last minute thoughts on the old Psycho 3?
I have one last minute thought. Andy Perkins. Andy, not Andy Perkins. What's his name?
Anthony Perkins.
Anthony, I've been saying Andy Perkins all goddamn day, only because your Toy Story background with Andy from Toy Story, and yeah. So Anthony Perkins, I think when you think of AIDS and HIV, he's got to be like top 3 celebrities that you can think of, right? Like to me, I'm like, okay, who's number 1? Freddie Mercury's number 1.
Yep.
When you think of HIV and AIDS, obviously Magic Johnson's still alive, so it doesn't count. But like, I think Liberace's another one, and him. I think he's like top 3 when it comes to AIDS celebrities, HIV celebrities. It has to be him, right?
Yeah, probably.
I was actually going to mention that earlier. Interesting you brought that up. He was, like you said, one of those celebrities that kind of brought AIDS as a more prevalent issue or, disease that was actually impacting people outside of the gay community, because during that period, it was like, oh, these are, and like, yeah, Anthony Perkins had come out of the closet at that point, but it was also still considered the gay disease during that time period. And so I think it was like those celebrities who were like, oh no, this could impact everybody. They were martyrs in that sense.
Yeah, it's like they didn't want their fans to know. They wanted their art to speak for itself.
Yeah.
And it's crazy.
All right, well, Andy, thank you so much for coming on, dude. Really appreciate it. We'll get you on for another one in the very near future.
Thank you for having me.
Andy, thank you so much for coming on. All right, Alec, want to spin the wheel?
Yes.
Okay, let's do it. Spinning! We have Freddy's Nightmares pilot.
Perfect, the TV show. Okay, cool. So we have Joe Testa coming on for that. Thank you, everybody, for listening to our episode today on Psycho 3, and we'll see you next week with the pilot of Freddy's Nightmares.
Woo!